unlike, North Carolina, you're out in Arizona. So what is the requirement of PE out there? So like in North Carolina, it's one semester. I mean, it's a 90-day, that's it. You have to take ninth grade PE and then we're done with high school, other than elective courses. What's the requirement that you guys have?
So that's a great question. We've got two different ways that we look at this. First and foremost, Arizona is a local control state. So essentially each LEA can decide and determine what they want to do to meet whatever it is that the requirements and the standards are. So if we look at the elementary level, we have an Arizona state statute, right? So it's education law, but statutes are a little different than like legislative requirements. Sometimes there's a little more leeway in those statutes. The statute says that all K through 8 students prior to being promoted into the 9th grade have to be competent, and I use that word competent because that is a direct quote from our statute, competent in health and physical education and several other subject areas. And in that same language, it says local school boards determine competency. So for example, our second largest LEA here in Arizona, our second largest district, their elementary PE teachers don't exist. Their classroom teachers teach physical activity, and the district counts that as physical education. And so what that looks like in Arizona is anything. And then at the secondary level, PE is just lumped in with all the other electives, and there is no requirement at all for any high school to require physical education. It's not a graduation requirement. Health isn't even usually considered in many of our high school programs. That being said, we did a survey. About 80% of our high schools actually do require it for their graduation requirements, but it is not a requirement from the state of Arizona.
See, that to me is kind of crazy because, here we are, we're always fighting for positions, and then you have a state where you don't necessarily have to have a PE teacher, and that's a tough thing to do. And it is always interesting to know what other states' requirements are, and that's the other cool thing about having you on from Arizona. Hey, what do you do in Arizona versus North Carolina?
Yeah, and I think we also, to add to that, to make it even more fun, 2 years ago, our governor signed into legislation a bill that says teachers don't actually have to be certified. So because we have such a teacher, and that was a good thing at the time, because in our rural areas, they're really struggling because we have a massive teacher shortage in Arizona. But the consequence of that is we have YMCA instructors teaching physical education, and they're calling it physical education. And we all know that that's physical activity at its best, not anywhere near physical education. It's not standard aligned. It's not assessed properly. It's a whole mess, right? So, we do what we can here, but we still have some of the most amazing programs in the country, despite all of those things. So we do what we do, and our teachers make it work. And there's so many teachers in the state that I would lift up and call out and have anybody come watch. So,
yeah. I just find it interesting that they have strong language that states, and I wrote this down, competent in health and PE, but LEAs can decide what that competency looks like. So the language seems like, wow, you are going to have standards aligned assessments, and you have, how do you know that kids are proficient and competent in those areas? So to me, at first I was like, wow, you guys that's pretty cool. But then it's actually just written expression that it's loosely term word competency in your state.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's competency is defined by whoever, right? Yeah. Whoever happens to be on the school board, who may or may not have had any kind of actual school experience.
That's correct. Because anybody on a school board member or school board does not have to have an education background.